All right, so get ready because today we are taking a deep dive into the Pilgrim's Progress.
Oh, a classic.
It really is. And, it's an allegory and told as this dream sequence narrated by a storyteller, and we never really know who the storyteller is.
Interesting.
It really is. But the story follows, of course, our main character, Christian.
This is a story that's been popular for a really long time.
Oh, yeah.
And I think even though it's, centuries old now, it still has a message that really connects with people
Absolutely.
about the spiritual journeys that we all go on.
Yeah, so we're going to be exploring Christian's journey from the city of destruction,
Okay.
which represents, of course, the world that we live in with all of its temptations and pitfalls, to the celestial city,
Right.
which symbolizes heaven.
Gotcha.
And for this deep dive, we're going straight to the source,
Awesome.
using excerpts from the book itself.
I love that. It's going to be an interesting one because we have some really dramatic encounters. Some fantastical characters, lots of layers of symbolism to unpack.
Absolutely.
It's like we're going to be exploring a whole world within this story.
A hidden world. I
Yeah.
love that. Okay, so let's just jump right in.
Okay.
So picture this. You are Christian, and you are carrying this massive burden. But it's not just like any weight, This is a physical representation of his awareness of his sin.
Right. So it's not just guilt.
Right.
It's more than that. It's this deep understanding that his actions, that his choices have consequences.
Absolutely.
And there's also this looming fear of what might happen in the afterlife.
Oh,
this
yeah.
fear of judgment. And this is a really strong motivator, I think, that pushes him to try to seek some sort of deliverance, some sort of freedom from this burden.
And that deliverance comes at a cost, doesn't it?
It does.
So he actually leaves his family behind, knowing that they really don't understand
Right.
this desperate need that he has to find salvation.
Yeah. So that's got to be hard, right?
Oh, I can't even imagine.
That internal conflict for him.
Absolutely.
Between his responsibility to his family
Right.
and this yearning for something bigger than himself.
Yeah, and it makes you think, how far would you go
Right?
to stay true to your own beliefs?
Yeah.
Would you be willing to give up everything that you know
Right.
for something that is unknown?
That's a big question.
It is a big question.
Yeah.
So Christian begins this journey, and he encounters this awful bog
Oh,
called the Slough of Despond.
That doesn't sound good.
Even the name just sounds terrible.
What is it about this place? What's going on here?
Well, so the Slough of Despond is actually brilliant
Okay.
because it is such a vivid image, right?
Right.
So think of it as like this swamp, but it's filled with self-doubt, fear, temptation,
Oh, the bad stuff.
all the things we try to bury and not even admit to ourselves that we have.
That negative stuff.
It's all there, and it's like waiting to just suck you in.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what happens to Pliable, who was Christian's companion at the beginning.
Okay.
He gets spooked, and he just runs back home.
Can't say I blame him.
I don't blame him either. But it does make you think about all those people that start these journeys
Right.
with the best of intentions, and then the minute something gets hard, they give up.
It's like they love the idea of self-improvement or positive change, but
Yeah.
they're just not prepared to do the work
The work is too much.
or to face those messy emotions and the slough of despond.
Right, exactly. But Christian, now, he perseveres.
Okay.
He keeps going.
Good for him.
And then he encounters this character who at first seems very well-meaning.
Okay.
Mr. Worldly Wise Man.
What's his deal?
So Mr. Worldly Wise Man, he is interesting.
Okay.
Because he represents that temptation to try to find solutions to your problems within the systems of the world.
Okay.
So he's all about outward appearances, doing all the right things,
Gotcha.
but without really addressing any of those deeper issues
Yeah.
that we all have within our hearts.
Right. So it's like a superficial fix.
Yes, exactly.
Rather than a deep, meaningful change.
And he tries to steer Christian away from the wicket gate, which is the entrance to the true path of salvation.
Okay.
And instead, he suggests that he takes a little detour to see this guy, Mr. Legality, who lives in the village of morality.
Okay. I mean, it sounds pretty good so far, right?
It does sound good.
Who doesn't want to be moral and follow the law?
Right, exactly. And you see Christian almost falling for it,
Oh.
which shows you how easily we can be swayed by these seemingly reasonable alternatives.
Right. Especially if it seems like an easier path.
Easier, yeah, definitely. But it's a good thing that Evangelist shows up.
Who's that?
Evangelist is like Christian's spiritual wake-up call.
Oh, okay.
And he points out just how dangerous these false prophets can be, Right.
So not everyone who tries to help is actually leading you in the right direction?
No, absolutely not.
That's a good lesson.
And I love this encounter because it really highlights the crucial need for discernment. We have to be so careful and really examine the sources of the advice that we take in our lives.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Like, who are we listening to?
Right.
And what are their motives?
Yeah, are they trying to help me or are they trying to help themselves?
Exactly.
Interesting.
So, Evangelist directs Christian back to the wicket gate.
Okay.
But first, he has this intense experience with Mount Sinai.
Ooh, Mount Sinai.
What's the significance of that?
So when I think of Mount Sinai, I think of the law, right?
Yes.
So the Ten Commandments.
Uh-huh.
And it's imposing. It's almost threatening.
It is.
And I think that symbolizes the potential for fear and judgment when we
Mhm.
just focus on the rules and regulations without really understanding the bigger picture of, like, grace and forgiveness.
Yeah, you can get really caught up in those rules
Absolutely.
and forget that there's something bigger.
Right?
So Christian is dealing with a lot here. I mean,
Yeah.
he's confronted with this temptation
Yeah.
and fear and this looming sense of judgment. But he eventually reaches the wicket gate,
Okay.
which is that starting point,
Yeah.
for the real journey ahead.
I see. So what's the wicket gate all about?
So the wicket gate represents making that conscious choice.
Yeah.
To dedicate yourself to a different way of living.
Right.
So it's to seek something that is beyond the material world, that's beyond just, what we see every day.
So it's like the entry point to this life that's focused on something bigger.
Exactly.
Okay.
But even at the wicket gate, there are dangers.
Really?
Oh, yeah. So he actually has to dodge these literal arrows.
Oh, what? I know.
Where are they coming from?
They're being shot from Beelzebub's castle.
That's intense.
It's like, talk about a hostile welcome, right? Seriously. So I see these arrows as these spiritual attacks that can come when we are trying to change for the better.
Interesting.
We start to have doubts, temptations,
Wow.
maybe even outright persecution.
And this could come from external forces or even within ourselves.
So Beelzebub is like the enemy here.
Yeah, he's like the representation of all the forces of evil.
I see.
But it's a good thing that Goodwill, the gatekeeper, steps in to help Christian.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
So who is Goodwill?
I think he represents that grace and that protection that can guide us to safety.
So even when we're facing these challenges, we're not alone.
Not at all.
That's good to know.
Yeah. And Goodwill even directs Christian toward the place of deliverance,
Okay.
which is that ultimate goal of being free from that burden that he carries.
Right.
And that brings us to the next stop on Christian's journey, which is the house of the interpreter.
Ooh, I've always liked this part of the story.
Oh, me too. It's fascinating.
Why is that?
Well, because it's like you go through this crash course
Uh-huh.
in Christian symbolism.
Right.
It's a space for reflection, deeper understanding.
I see.
He encounters all these different scenes that represent various aspects of faith.
So it's like a museum almost.
It's like a museum, yes.
Designed to prepare him.
Absolutely.
Boy.
And then finally, we reach the moment we've all been waiting for. Christian arrives at the place of deliverance.
Oh, so this is it.
This is it.
Like, this is the big moment.
This is the big moment. All the things that he's been through have led him up to this point.
Wow.
And it's where the weight of all of his sin is lifted.
That's huge.
So-
What happens? How does it happen?
So the way it happens is so vivid. So imagine these straps that are holding his burden just break, and the burden rolls away and falls into this open tomb.
Oh.
You can just feel the relief
Oh, yeah.
and the weight being lifted from him.
It's such a visual representation of, like, what grace can do.
Absolutely. He's set free.
So what happens next?
Well, he even receives new clothes from the angels
Oh, wow.
and a passport to the celestial city.
So it's a new beginning.
A whole new start.
Yeah.
He has this new identity,
I love that.
but his journey's not over.
It's not.
No. We're going to have to wait until after the break to delve into the next chapter of his adventures.
You know, it's interesting because even after this huge moment,
Yeah.
this transformation, Christian's journey isn't over.
Right.
It just shows that, like,
Yeah.
spiritual growth is this ongoing process.
For sure. And it's not long before he's faced with, new challenges.
Oh.
So he comes across these three figures: simple, sloth, and presumption.
Okay, I feel like I can already guess what they're all about just from the names.
Right. I mean, they're pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
But what do they represent, in the grand scheme of things?
Well, I think they represent the trap of complacency,
Of our
self-deception.
Mhm.
You know, they're like, happy with just a surface level understanding of faith.
Oh.
And they're not willing to do that hard work of like really looking at themselves and growing.
Yeah, like they've gotten comfortable.
Right.
And they're not really engaging with their beliefs.
Totally. And Christian tries to warn them.
And he does. They're not interested.
Typical.
It's a good reminder that you can't force people to see things your way.
Right.
Even if you think it's for their own good.
Yeah, that's a tough lesson.
It is.
But it's true. It really speaks to the individual nature of this journey.
Absolutely.
Like, we each have to choose our own path.
Make our own choices.
And we have to face the consequences of those choices.
Right. And then we have formality and hypocrisy.
Oh, boy. More trouble.
I know. They look the part,
Okay.
but they're all about appearances.
Got it.
There's no real substance there.
Right.
And they try to take a shortcut,
Oh.
which, as you can imagine,
But doesn't end well.
does not end well.
Oh, I was going to say,
Yeah, yeah.
so what happens?
Well, let's just say that they don't make it very far.
That's what happens when you take shortcuts.
That's what happens when you take shortcuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a good lesson, I guess, that it's not about faking it.
It's not.
It's about actually believing it.
Right. That genuine belief.
Right. And like really committing to the journey.
And speaking of the journey, Christian is still diligently, making his way up that hill of difficulty.
Okay.
And even he has moments of weakness.
Yeah, we're all human.
I know. He actually falls asleep and he loses his scroll.
Oh, no. Isn't that like his passport to the celestial city?
It is. It is. So that's a big deal.
Yeah, that is a big deal.
And I think this whole incident just highlights how important it is to be vigilant, right? To persevere. Because even when you've had a spiritual awakening, you can still slip up and lose sight of your goals.
So it's like a reminder that we can't get complacent.
We can't. No.
We have to keep going, keep striving.
Absolutely.
So did he ever find the scroll?
Well, thankfully, he does go back and find it.
Okay, good.
But then he encounters mistrust and timorous.
Those names do not sound promising.
Not at all. And they start telling him all these scary stories
Oh, no.
about these lions that guard the palace beautiful.
Oh, so they're trying to scare him.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'd be tempted to turn around, too, if I were him.
Seriously. So they're like embodying fear and doubt.
Exactly. Like, there are those voices inside our heads that try to keep us from moving forward, you know?
They feed on our insecurities.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's so sneaky how fear works like that.
I know. But Christian, bless him, he overcomes his fear and continues on.
Okay.
And when he gets there, he discovers that the lions are actually chained.
Oh, so the danger wasn't even real.
It wasn't real.
That's such a good metaphor for how our fears can hold us back.
Absolutely.
Even when there's, like, nothing to be afraid of.
And the porter, watchful, even explains that the lions are actually there to test the faith of the pilgrims.
I see.
So the challenges that we face, they're not meant to break us.
Okay.
They're meant to make us stronger.
Right, they're testing our resolve.
Yes.
Okay.
And, speaking of the Palace Beautiful, what a wonderful place for Christian.
Yeah, it sounds nice.
It's like he's been through so much.
Yeah.
And now he gets to spend 3 days there, resting, recovering.
What happens at the Palace Beautiful?
Well, he gets this amazing suit of armor,
Oh, wow.
which he's going to need because you know what's coming next.
Yeah, that armor is going to come in handy.
It is.
Because Apollyon is next, right?
Apollyon is next. And we all know who Apollyon is.
Yeah, the big bad demon.
The big, terrifying demon. He wants to drag Christian back to the city of destruction.
Of course he does.
Of course he does.
So he's like the embodiment of everything that's working against Christian's progress.
He is. He represents temptation, doubt, fear. Anything that tries to pull us off our path.
It's a tough battle.
It's a huge battle. And it's described in such vivid detail. Like, it's like an epic battle from, like, a movie or something.
Oh, I love that.
And Christian fights with all his might using the sword of the Spirit, which represents, of course, the power of faith.
And belief.
And belief, yes.
So it's not just a physical battle.
No.
It's also an internal struggle.
It's a struggle for his soul, basically.
Right. It's about resisting temptation
Uh-huh.
and standing up for what you believe in.
And guess what? Christian
Yeah.
wins.
He does.
He does. He drives Apollyon away.
Yay. Go, Christian.
But he doesn't have much time to celebrate because he's now entering the valley of the shadow of death.
Ooh, that sounds ominous.
Doesn't it, though? And it's just as unsettling as it sounds.
Oh, no. What's it like?
Well, so he starts to hear all these whispers,
Okay.
like these evil, demonic voices
Uh-oh.
taunting him, trying to, make him afraid.
I'd be terrified.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it would make anyone lose their nerve.
Seriously.
But even in this darkness,
Yeah.
there is hope.
Okay.
Christian actually finds comfort in Scripture.
Oh, that's nice.
So he's reciting these words that remind him that he's not alone.
He's got backup.
He does.
So even in our darkest moments,
Yeah.
we can find strength in our beliefs.
Yes, absolutely. And you know what? He's not alone anymore either.
Really? Who joins him?
So he is joined by Faithful, another pilgrim from the city of destruction.
Oh, wow. A familiar face.
I know, it's like a reunion of survivors, right?
They've got to stick together.
They do. They need each other.
Yeah.
And together they face this incredible place called Vanity Fair.
Vanity Fair, what's that?
Okay, so imagine this. It's this giant marketplace,
Okay.
and it is filled with everything that you could ever want.
Uh-huh.
But it's all designed to tempt you,
Okay.
to distract you from your true path.
Got it. So it's like the allure of material possessions and all
Yes.
those worldly pleasures.
It is. It represents all of that. And Christian and Faithful, they stand strong.
Good for them.
They refuse to be seduced by all the glitz and glamour.
Yeah, but that's probably not easy.
It's not. And their defiance comes at a price.
What happens?
Well, Faithful is actually arrested and then executed for his beliefs.
Oh, no, that's terrible.
It is. It's a reminder that sometimes following your faith can have really serious consequences.
Right. There can be a real cost to standing up for what you believe in.
A huge cost. But it also shows just how committed people can be to their conviction.
Like they're willing to die for what they believe in.
They are. Faithful's death is a really powerful moment in the story.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking, but it's also really inspiring.
It is. And so Christian, though he is heartbroken, he continues on.
Mm-hmm.
And a new companion joins him. Hopeful.
Hopeful. That's a good sign.
I know, right? And I think he represents that resilience,
Yeah.
that ability to find that strength to carry on even when you've experienced a huge loss.
So hopeful is like that reminder that even when things are tough,
Yeah.
there's still hope.
There's still hope.
And that it's okay to find comfort and support in others.
Yeah,
It's a good message.
It is. So Christian and Hopeful, they face many more challenges together. What awaits them on this next leg of their journey?
Well, on this next part of their journey, they come to this place called the Shilluker.
The Hill Lucre.
Yeah, and it's basically described as this giant silver mine.
Okay.
And you have this guy named Damas who is like completely obsessed with getting rich.
Right.
Like as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that get-rich-quick
Yeah.
scheme.
Exactly. And so the Hill Lucre really represents that temptation of wealth and greed, right? It's a huge distraction from what they should really be focused on.
Right. That true goal.
Exactly. And I think it's interesting how Christian and Hopeful, like, they see through it.
They do.
They're not falling for it.
No.
But then they meet these other characters.
Wow, who do they meet now?
They meet Bayans and his little group,
Okay.
and they present themselves as pilgrims, but you quickly realize that they're only interested in what they can get out of it.
Yeah, like what's in it for me?
Exactly. Like they're not truly sincere.
Right.
And Bayans, he's like the poster child for hypocrisy.
Yeah, it's all an act.
Totally. Like
Yeah.
he's using his faith for his own gain.
Right, instead of trying to grow spiritually.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like he's trying to cheat the system or something.
And I love that, their lack of sincerity
Yeah.
has consequences.
Like what?
Well, they meet their end at the Hill Lucre, and it really reinforces that idea that true faith is about more than just appearances.
It's about what's in your heart.
It really is. You can't fake it.
No. So what happens to Christian and Hopeful? Do they keep going?
They do, but they make a little mistake.
Oh.
I know, right? So they stray from the main path and decide to take this shortcut.
A shortcut.
I know. It's called Bypath Meadow.
Why would they do that? I mean, they've come so far.
I know, and it's interesting because it shows that even those who are sincere
Yeah.
can be tempted
Right.
to take that easy route, even when it might not be the best choice.
So they're not perfect.
No, we're all human.
Right. We make mistakes.
We do. And of course, this shortcut leads them straight into trouble.
What kind of trouble?
Well, they're captured by Giant Despair and his wife, Diffidence.
Giant Despair. That sounds scary.
Doesn't it, though?
Yeah.
Who are they?
Well, I think Giant Despair and Diffidence,
Yeah.
they represent those feelings of doubt and discouragement that we all experience.
Right, those inner struggles. Yes, exactly. And they're thrown into Doubting Castle.
Doubting Castle. Oh, no.
It's terrifying, and they're tortured, and they're tempted to just give up on everything.
That's awful. So the castle represents, like, what happens when we let those negative thoughts take over?
Yeah, it's like we become prisoners of our own minds.
That's a scary thought.
It is a scary thought. But Christian, he remembers he has this key
Oh.
called promise.
Promise. What does that represent?
Well, I think the key of promise represents hope.
Okay.
And that belief in something bigger than ourselves.
Right. So it's like having faith even when things are really tough.
Exactly. And you know what? It unlocks all the doors of the castle.
Really? So they escape?
They escape, they get out, and eventually they reach the Delectable Mountains.
Delectable Mountains. That sounds much better than Doubting Castle.
Oh, so much better.
Yeah.
It's like a breath of fresh air after all the darkness they've been through.
Yeah, so it's like a symbol of spiritual renewal.
It is. It's a place of rest and encouragement.
Oh, I like that.
And it gets even better.
It does?
The shepherds that live there,
Okay.
they give Christian and hopeful this perspective glass.
Okay.
And they can see the celestial city.
Wow.
I know, right?
That's got to be motivating.
So motivating. But even in this idyllic place, there are warnings.
Oh, there's always warnings.
Always warnings. So the shepherds tell him about the flatterer.
The flatterer. Who's that?
Well, the flatterer is this deceptive character who tries to lead pilgrims astray.
Okay, so he's like the voice of temptation again?
He is. He represents those false teachings and ideas that can distract us from the truth.
Right, so you got to be careful who you listen to.
We do. And unfortunately, Christian and hopeful, they fall for his tricks.
They do?
I know. They get caught in a net, and they have to be rescued by an angel.
Oh, wow. So even when we think we're doing okay, we can still mess up.
We can. It's a reminder that we always have to be on guard.
Right, never let your guard down.
And they encounter this guy, atheist.
Atheist.
Yeah, and he's trying to convince them that heaven doesn't exist.
Oh, wow. So how do you deal with that? Like when someone's challenging your beliefs like that?
Well, I think it forces you to really examine what you believe
Right.
and why you believe it.
Okay. So it's a chance to strengthen your faith.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then there's little Faith who gets robbed and almost loses everything.
Oh, no. Poor little Faye.
It's tough,
Yeah.
but I think it's a reminder that even the most faithful among us
Yeah.
can experience setbacks and hardships.
That's a good point. It's not always going to be easy.
No.
Yeah.
And then there's ignorance.
Ignorance.
Yeah, and he believes he could just, get into the celestial city just by being a good person.
So he's kind of missing the point.
He is.
Mm.
And it highlights that we can't earn our way into heaven.
Right. It's not about being perfect.
No. And unfortunately, ignorance doesn't make it. He arrives at the celestial city,
Okay.
but he doesn't have the right passport.
Oh.
Remember that passport they got at the beginning?
Right.
You can't get into the celestial city without it.
So ignorance took a shortcut and it didn't work out.
It didn't. There are no shortcuts on this journey.
Wow, that's a powerful message.
It is. And then finally, after all their trials and tribulations,
Yeah.
Christian and hopeful, they reach the land of Beulah.
The land of Beulah, what's that like?
Well, it's described as this beautiful, peaceful place
Okay.
that's right before the celestial city.
So it's like the final resting place before they reach their destination.
Yes, exactly.
They must be so relieved.
Oh, absolutely. But to actually get to the celestial city,
Yeah.
they have to cross the river of death.
The river of death. What does that symbolize?
I think it represents that final passage from this life to the next.
Right, that transition from the earthly realm to the eternal.
Exactly. Christian initially really struggles because he's still, carrying the weight of his past.
Wow.
But hopeful helps him through it.
I like that they're supporting each other even to the very end.
And they both make it to the celestial city.
They do.
They do.
Yay!
I was rooting for them.
I know. They're welcomed with open arms. I bet. That's got to be amazing.
It really is. It's been quite a journey with Christian and hopeful.
Yeah, it has. The Pilgrim's Progress is so full of these powerful images and metaphors.
Absolutely.
And I think it really speaks to that universal human desire to find meaning and purpose.
Yeah, regardless of, your own personal beliefs, I think
Yeah.
you can connect with Christian's story.
Totally. And it really makes you think, what would your celestial city be?
Yeah, what are you striving for?
And what burdens are you carrying?
And what are you willing to sacrifice to reach your own celestial city?
Those are great questions to think about.
They are. The Pilgrim's Progress is a timeless story that encourages all of us to examine our lives and embark on our own unique journeys of growth and transformation.
It's been a fascinating deep dive.
It really has.
Thanks for taking us on this journey.
Absolutely. Until next time.